It's John Bowden from Rock History Music, and now our entire interview with Steve Porcaro. He has a brand new album out. We'll tell you a lot about that during this video. Best work he's ever done. Very, very proud of him, and we're hoping to get him back on so we can talk about more Toto stories, more making film score stories, and of course, the new record. Steve Porcaro on Rock History Music.
I wanted to tell you, Chase is kicking ass. I've been seeing clips of your boy playing drums, and he's like on this next level. I just wanted you to hear that coming from me. He's got this confidence and this looseness about him, and that is really, really impressive. He's really got it.
Well, you know who who his hero is, your brother, right?
But I'm just, you know what? There's a lot of guys that my brother's their hero. Chase has got it. You know what I mean? I wish he was in another time, to be honest with you. I wish it was another time, but and we'll talk more about it. I want to ask you some stuff maybe after we're done, but
Thank you.
He's really impressing me. I just wanted to let you know that.
Do you know what his favorite picture is of all time? You and him
Clearly.
sitting down. The picture in Vancouver when we were backstage,
Yeah,
that's
I
his
know the
favorite
one.
picture of all time.
He's really kicking ass.
Oh, anyway,
Really
there you go.
proud. You know what I mean? He sounds great.
How do you look at sense of purpose? Because it keeps people alive and healthy usually.
No, let me tell you too, something that's really dawned on me is that I'll hear a lot of my contemporaries talking about, man, the days when we, especially all the yacht talk of yacht rock and all this stuff and what it was like then. And man, we were all in the room together and we were bouncing off each other. And there was the producer and the engineer and the artist, and we played and we did it and it was done. Believe me, I was there. I wasn't usually one of the guys cutting the tracks, but I sure witnessed a whole lot of that, of these very, very talented musicians nailing it one or two passes and what they would come up with. So I'm very aware of it. But what I've done, and I don't see I see a lot of my contemporaries bemoaning that those days are gone, that everyone's in their little home studios, phoning in their parts, and what a drag that is. I look at it differently. I'm looking at it, I embrace the way things are now, wherein I love having a Mike Landau play guitar on my thing, and I send him my track. I send him my whatever demo, fake samples, synths, guitars I've been monitoring on a separate track. I'll give him a little bit of direction, and he sends me back 5 tracks of stuff that, you know what? If I was in the room with him, I would have stopped him from doing that. I would have said, hey, that third thing that he sent me, I would have gone, I got that covered. Don't bother with that. You know what I mean? Instead, I get these surprises that I would have never thought of in a million years. And the control freak in me is still able to go and grab them. And you know what? I want that to happen in every B section. That one fluke thing he did on that third B section where he screwed up, quote unquote, we would have fixed it or something. That's my favorite part of the tune. I'm going to put that on every B section. And so I've embraced. Sure, I remember those days. Sure, those days were great for what they were. And it was so much fun to be a part of it. But, a drummer like Shannon Forrest, I'm able to send him my 2-bar drum. I don't spend one. I look at what color my hair is in the mirror, and I realize how little time I have left. And I'm not going to be tweaking drum machine parts with what time I have left. I do my little 2-bar thing that I wrote to and that I've been working to, and I send it to Shannon, and I get back this nice, nuanced, incredible drum part. I know who his favorite drummer was.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? And he knows what I want to hear, and it's done. It's done. It's just I'm embracing these days. It's really a realization of my mortality. I really had that thing I forever was Jeff and Mike's little brother, and I thought I was going to be 31 years old forever. And now I realize, the clock's ticking, and everything I do now with my music, if I can, and believe me, the first couple songs when I wanted brass on it, people used to hire me to do synth brass because of my collection of samples and because of the way I knew synthesis. But if I caught myself spending more than 10 minutes getting a trumpet sound or a brass sound, I stopped. I said, F this. I'm going to call in a trumpet player. They'll do what I'm trying to do easily. I only want to do what only I can do.
Tonight, speaking of hooks on trumpet, was it Joe Kraus?
Yes, it is Joe from Germany. Yeah.
That's like a hook, the way he plays trumpet on that. Holy, I heard that and went, what the hell?
Well, that's what I thought 20 years ago when I heard this song called Get Rid from this band Tab 2. A friend of mine who was trying to help them out, he gave me a CD of theirs. I never heard of them. It was this German acid jazz band kind of thing. They were rapping and doing hip hop beats, and then had muted trumpet. Joe was you know what I mean? He was a trumpet player, and there was this one song on there called Get Rid that I just loved. I thought that hook, that chorus just killed me. And here, this many years later, I got in touch with them through the guy who hit me to him. And I said, do you guys mind if I just grab that thing? I want to write. You know what I was thinking of is Baker Street, Jerry Rafferty.
Yeah.
And how it was, as right, great song, instrumental chorus, no words in the chorus, just this great saxophone line. That was my thinking for Tonight, the song Tonight. And I thought, I love that, just that hook from that song of theirs. And I said, can I make you guys write, or, will you be co-writers with me on this? Can I just grab that whole thing and just plug it into my song? And they were like, sure. We'd been working on some other things, Joe and I. He's helped me with some other little bebop things that haven't been heard yet. But I thought the same thing you did. I thought, how cool is that? It just seemed so up and happy, and it was such a groove. Never sampled anything in my life, and I was like,
Really?
come on, can I grab that? Oh yeah. I was like, can I grab that? You know what I mean? As far as anything musically.
When I've talked to mature people who have this fervor for life all of a sudden, in spite of what they might have been a few years ago, I mean, they're just going, I mean, Bill Bruford told me, I know you're a big Yes fan, but Bill Bruford said, I think he said the 60s were, in his 60s, it might have been 70s. He says, they're the best years of my life. He said, I don't know. I just felt more comfortable. The body was not as comfortable, but I was more comfortable in just, it's discernment. It's all those mother statements you can put in. I'm going to have fun here. I'm going to go out having fun. I'm going to go out doing what I want to do.
The first time I saw Yes was very early 70s. Alan White had been with them for 2 weeks. And it was mind-blowing. And I didn't miss a concert for the next, I don't even know how many years. They'd be at the Forum. I never missed a show. And that was what they call the classic Yes lineup. But for me, and a lot of my Yes fan friends would disagree with me, but for me, the peak was close to the edge.
Yeah.
I like there was some great stuff afterwards, some incredible stuff afterwards. But for me, something that I still listen to, the whole album is close to the edge. And you know what? And I know those guys didn't give out songwriting credit and stuff like that real easily. Take a look at those first albums. Take a look at all that stuff, and Bill Bruford. What was the one thing missing after Close to the Edge? Everyone else was there. And I loved Alan White. I don't want to take anything away from what a great musician, and by the way, what a great guy he was too. But what was the one thing missing?
It doesn't really matter. Yeah, I like that one.
Me too.
So
that happens like some of the best songs. That was me trying to learn a piece of software. This is why I'm constantly seduced by, you know what I mean? My attention deficit is like there's constantly new shiny thing running by when I'm supposed to be working, when I'm supposed to be finishing something. When my work gets hard, all of a sudden, whether it's a new song idea or a new piece of software, I all of a sudden see. For that, it was Ableton Live. I was trying to teach myself Ableton Live, and I was doing this practice sequence, just trying to go through the motions and just do a little 8-bar whatever to just try to learn Ableton Live. And I came up with that, what you hear in the intro, that very first thing, which was very cool. And I'd been sitting on it for the last 3 years or something like that. And then, for the record, it was one that I definitely wanted to finish.
Maryland, first track, co-written by one of my favorite guys that I've talked to twice in the last 6 months, Stan Lynch.
Great. Yeah, I brought Stan in way after the fact. The song was pretty much done. And that was just something that came together the last couple of years. That was a recent thing, and I had the chorus all done lyrically and stuff. But as I get older, I'm just trying to up my lyric game. You know what I mean? A little bit, and well, a lot actually. And I brought Stan in to just kind of give it the once over, and he helped a lot. We had just finished Saints and Angels, which was something Paige and I brought him in right away. I kind of had a rough outline lyrically of what I wanted, and I knew I wanted to name drop as many California coastal cities as I could in the song. But Stan came in and just gave it this kind of narrative, pulling into a driveway, starting off, "Come with me, I know just where to go." Stan really completed the song for us. You know what I mean?
Well, Saints and Angels, such a cool California sunshine song, and Stan plays drums on it. And
It was the total love letter to California. And Stan, by the way, he played his ass off on it, and he's got this amazing studio. You know what I mean? Where he lives, he's got this amazing home studio, and it was great having him be so involved and play drums on it, and just working. We never kind of worked together back in the day when I was doing Henley, and I knew he
yeah,
was very close. I had worked with Mike Campbell, and I was in the same room when we did Boys of Summer and stuff like that. I mean, not that we were ever friends. Ben Mott and I have some mutual friends, but I never really knew any of those guys. I never knew them. I knew, Stan had worked closely with Toto on some stuff after I had left the band. I just kind of popped my head in the studio a couple times and would say hello to him, and we would see each other at Henley parties or something like that. But I never really knew him. But I knew David did, and I just kind of, again, in wanting to finish stuff and have the level be up there, I was real quick to say, let's give Stan a call.
who's Miss Jane Sinclair?
Toto had just done the last album I did with the guys. They had a real cool song. It was mostly, we were all kind of co-writing then. We were all in the same room, but it was mostly Joseph's tune, a tune called Chelsea, which was kind of a basic kind of groove like that. But I just did my own thing. I was again, that was a very recent thing. And mine was more about the piano doing the quarter notes and a guitar. And it was just kind of my own thing. And I had recently hooked up with a guy, David Camp, the guy who writes for the New Yorker and does magazine articles and has written book. He's the writer on the new the Spinal Tap book, that the official Spinal Tap book that just came out, together with the new movie. It's written with David Camp. He's a writer. I sent him my thing and just me kind of scatting a melody, and he wrote this whole lyric about Miss Jane Sinclair, and I loved it. I loved it. I didn't change a syllable on it.
Is it anybody?
It's I was in love with most of my female teachers growing up. You know what I mean? at some point or another. I was definitely that guy. Not in a weird stalking way,
We
but
all were.
we all were. You know what I'm saying? That's why I dig it so much. It's a very, to me, it's very relatable. You know what I'm saying? Even from a 68-year-old guy, I still can remember.
There's
I
a
was with
Beatle.
my first grade teacher. You know,
I sensed a slight Beatle thing in there. I don't know what it was.
absolutely. Beatles and Chicago. Bah, bah, bah. You know, does anybody know what time it is? Horn parts, definitely with the bone and stuff like that. I love those records, those first few, everything with Terry Kath in it. I just, adored, you know what I mean? Those guys were on fire. And James Paint, I'm pretty sure that was mostly all James Pankow, the trombone player, doing the actual arrangements.
And I like, speaking of, does anyone really know what time it is? To me, Robert Lamb at the beginning, I mean, it ended up being Peter Cetera, but in the beginning, Terry Kath, I liked his voice, but I like his guitar playing better. But Robert Lamb's voice to me, I thought he sounds like a crooner in a rock band.
That was, I think, the Peter Cetera thing. That was kind of, God bless him. The guy had more to do with my career than anybody starting off, but David Foster kind of liked with these bands when he would come in on it with a band, it was like, where's my tenor? Where's my tenor? Where's my singer? Where's the guy who I wish I could sing like? And will take direction from me. You know what I mean? That kind of seemed to be, I kind of saw that happen with the Tubes. For me, yeah, the Tubes, She's a Beauty, can't argue with it. He delivered a hit song for sure. I worked on it with Page and James Howard
Yep.
together with Mike Cotton. Great underrated synth player, Mike Cotton. But for me, Young and Rich, the stuff that's doesn't have to do with Fee Waybill. God bless him. Fee's a great friend of the band and all that. But Bill Spooner, listen to the album Young and Rich. And to me, that's the Tubes. You know what I mean?
What do you think of Prairie Prince as a drummer? I like because he's really hard drummers.
I think he's fantastic. I think he's a different kind of drummer than say my brother Jeff or something like
Yeah.
that. But Prairie always, I saw him with Todd Rundgren a few times. I've seen him in a few different situations, and Prairie's always great, and he was perfect for the Tubes in my estimation.
I've got a picture here with you and James Newton Howard. How far back do you go with him?
James, I remember hearing about him getting the gig with Elton John, when Elton John added a keyboard player. I think I even read it in Variety or something like that. When Elton was expanding his band.
Rock of the Westies, yeah.
You know what I mean? And all that. But then soon after, he became a friend. We started seeing him in the studio. We all were working with Richard Perry together at Studio 55 where we first worked. As a matter of fact, James just reached out to me, reminded me, we were saying, which one was our first thing? Bill Schnee had hired James to do synth on a Pablo Cruz thing, and I had just gotten my CS80, which I was using on all the Toto stuff, and James had me come do that. But I think even before that, he produced Valerie Carter. He produced a Valerie Carter album, and I think he reminded me, this song Crazy, I did a synth solo on and stuff like that, and he reminded me, I think that was our first session together.
You got Bill Schnee on this album on a few tracks too.
Oh, hell yeah.
I love Bill Schnee. He's great
Oh
interview.
yeah. Oh yeah, and he loved working on. He loved the stuff I sent him, and that I use real horns and real everything, and Bill saw me through some. You know what I mean? Bill used to hire me, like, again with James, real early on in my career. That was the one thing about, as far as drug use and cocaine and stuff that was so prevalent in the 70s and 80s. There was never, ever, not everybody was doing that nonsense. You know what I mean? There were all kinds of people like Bill Schnee, like Leland Sklar, and guys and they never not got hired because they weren't one of the bad boy cool kids or something in town. I never witnessed anything like that where somebody wasn't hired or used because they weren't doing what we were doing out of school. You know what I mean? Just the opposite of anything. You know, I think they always had respect that, you know what I mean? I mean, look at Lee Sklar. He
And he's
worked
on the album.
you know what I mean? The world's most famous junkies and stuff like that. Somehow all through the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, you know what I mean? Was just, you know, had this amazing career and just delivered. He's the bass player on Saints and Angels.
Yeah.
We brought in Lee, and it's some amazing bass playing. You know?
Change was with Michael McDonald. So that's an old song that from before, and it was Michael Jackson. Was it presented to Michael
You
Jackson?
never heard it? No. I had written three things. I had three starts. I had three separate things. And Mike Sherwood, my songwriting partner at the time, he came in and he was like, dude, all three of these things. He scattered a little idea on all three of them, and with the idea to pitch them to Michael as starts for Michael or something we would eventually finish for Michael. And you know, just the lyric concept, a lot of the melody on Change. And that was one that I just was like, you know what? I need to finish this, you know?
Wasn't that 2 weeks before Michael passed that you'd finished it or something?
Something like that. You know what I mean?
Right up his alley. Right up his alley.
Yeah, right. Lyrically and everything, it was really solid. It wasn't the usual word salad for me. You know what I mean? It was a real Julius Robinson also was Mike's go-to guy. Michael Sherwood's go-to guy to help with lyrics. So that's the three of us on there. But Mike and Julius did the lyrics. I kind of did everything else.
Getting some really, really nice buzz for this record.
It feels great. My thing is that you got to understand, and people think I'm being modest when I say some of this stuff, but I just could never, whether it was scoring a TV show or being on the road with Toto, to do that and write songs. I mean, Luke can do it. Luke can come home and he writes a song in 2 hours. He's done writing a song. Boom. And he goes in the studio and he does it and he cuts the track and he's out of there. He's that good and he's that fast and he's that talent, you know. For me, I love tweaking. I love fiddling with this stuff. I love trying something, experimenting. It's all so much fun to me, but especially if I wanted to be healthy and be a human being to my family and to my personal relationship, and my mom was still alive. I mean, that was the main reason I needed to get off the road. My dad was getting real sick. My son was struggling. I needed to be home and be a human being. And I can't do both. I can't then. It's not like I was able to. I mean, I had plenty of friends that could sit there and I mean, they were doing big movies or a TV show and they could work 9 to 5. Then they'd go in and have dinner with their family and be a good husband and then come back out afterwards and work on their songs. Dude, when I had a TV show, it was 24/7. Bring me a sandwich. I got to keep going. The weekend, forget it. I got to get this done. Real threes do. It would own me.
You said that about Justified. That's one of the reasons yeah.
All of them were like that.
Really?
Every film score I did was like that. I just wasn't, John, yes, some cool things came out of it, but it just wasn't my lane. Do you know what I'm talking about? You know, I got to see guys like James Newton Howard, friends, and I would see them in the studio. I would see them writing. I would see them, and movie music would just pour out of them. Just as fast as they could play it, they'd write some brilliant stuff. And if the director made them do it again, they'd go, sure, I'll do that 7-minute cue again, no problem. And I'd be like, it would be so hard for me to get one version right. You know what I mean? You know, it was, you know, and it owned me. It owned me. It was day and night just to get it done. It's not like, okay, now it's the weekend, let's write songs. No, I needed to spend some time with my kids because they hadn't seen me for a week. You know what I mean? They hadn't seen me for 5 days because daddy was busy working. Everyone always ran interference. So, and I want to show for all the Toto fans that have given me so much love over the year and loved me back playing with the band. This is why I'm not just touring with them and whatever, is that I get to do this now. This is what it's like. Believe me, I know you'd love for me to be on all these tours and taking all these bows like I did for 9 years there. But you know what? This is really what you want me doing. If you're truly a fan of mine, you know what I mean? You want me finishing these songs, you know what I mean? And they're going to see how, whereas my last album was 9 effing years ago, okay, my next album will be, one in a year or two at the most. I've already got the next album's halfway done. Mixed. Okay, because this is all I do now. I am so blessed that I don't have to do a TV show. I don't have to go on the road. And I want to show everybody. I want to show everybody that it's not just me being self-indulgent, that I'm liking how these things are coming out when I'm embracing this new way that we work, and with everybody everyone in their home studios and stuff.
Did you ever hang out with Timothy Oliphant?
No, I went down. Season 2. I read the script to the first show of season 2, and it was taking place in a tent revival. It was this young guy who him and his sister had a traveling revival tent thing, Jesus Bible thumping thing, and in the tent was the band, was the band, you know what I mean? And so I called up the producers and said, hey, how about me and Mark Bonilla and my nephew Chase? I go, how about if we're the band? Wanting to be part of it. So I got to see Timothy, and I met him, and I would meet him at like rap parties and whatever. I never really hung with him at all. I'm a huge fan of him as an actor. You know what I mean? I love him as an actor. But and by the way, there was like the stupidest thing I ever did in my life. They were filming like up by Magic Mountain, up in the hills, try to find somewhere in Southern California that looks like Kentucky. You know what I mean? The closest they could come was up in these hills here, and it was freezing. And we couldn't be wearing, this had to be like, it was like a tent revival thing in the summer. So we had to I couldn't be wearing a sweater, you know what I mean? And it's taking forever. And I'm going, what was I thinking? You know what I mean? I always loathed making videos. I loathed when I would go with friends to their movie sets, watching a movie being made. Nothing could be worse,
Paint dry. Yeah.
Maybe watching me work as far as it being like drying paint. Who would want to watch me editing, you know what I'm saying, on a computer? It's like, it couldn't be more boring. And okay, it took us 2 hours to light that shot. Now let's get the 2 shot. Everyone take a 3-hour break. And it's like, what? You know what I mean? And for the same thing again. Now let's do the close-ups. It's like, oh my God. Could anything be more mind-numbingly boring?
Coming from a musical family, and even 65 with 65, 66 with Rubber Soul and Revolver, were you aware of those albums at that age, or were you too young?
All of it, like a ton of bricks. I mean, it's such a cliche. Lukather says it all the time. It's in our house, especially in our household, there was no folk music or Buddy Holly or Elvis, in our household at all. It was Miles Davis, it was Coltrane, maybe some big band stuff. It was jazz and maybe a little bit smattering of classical music, because both of my parents, were in orchestras and stuff like that. But my dad, Miles Davis quintets was the stuff. And then all of a sudden, 64, Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. We were the stereotypical, all 3 of us boys started a band the next day.
Yeah.
with cutout guitars. A neighbor had a jigsaw and cut us out. None of us played guitar. You know what I mean? None of us played guitar, cut us out jigsaws, and we would lip sync. You know what I mean? At our elementary school, we would lip sync to Beatles songs. You know, it was life changing. You know, and I remember even at that age, I think the first one I heard was "She Loves You." And then even at that age, I was just kind of aware of how fleeting, how bands kind of, it seemed like everybody was a one-hit wonder. It seemed to me then, a Trini Lopez would have a hit song, and then there's some other random guy would have a hit song. And the fact that She Love You was like followed up with I Want to Hold Your Hand, that these guys could do it. Like they could, where most people would be like lightning had struck and their career just peaked. It struck me at this really young age. Wow,
Something's
these
going
guys
on.
did it, and it's that good. It's as good as that first one that got me so excited. It was like, huh. And all of them, rubbers, every record that came out, we just devoured. With all the talk about the Beatles, I don't hear people talking about this a lot. I know the fact that John and Paul, the fact that they did everything 50-50, regardless of how much the other one was involved. I know some of that came to bite him in the ass down the line. Paul would have to get permission from Yoko to play Yesterday. You know what I mean? Things like you wouldn't want to even hear about shit like that happening. But on the good side, I know that thing as a songwriter where you're working on a song and you've got 50, you've got 60, 70, 80% of it. You've got it. You got the title. You got this great hook. You've got this great first couple lyrics. And just that bridge lyric is killing you. It's
That
stopping
bridge.
finishing the song. And we all have egos. We're all human beings. You think, I don't want to bring someone out. This is going to be such a hit song. I want it all for myself. I want this to be my song. And so what do? You either just plow through and get it done, and maybe it's not the best it could be. Dig how if you were Paul McCartney and that was happening, dig who your helper was that could help you bring the song home when you were stuck on that bridge lyric. Dig who his go-to guy. It wasn't going to matter. It wasn't going to affect him financially or as far as the credit went. Hey, John, I'm stuck on this bridge, and dig, the bridge would wind up being lyrically the hippest part of the song.
Yeah.
Life is very short and there's no time. You know what I mean? We could name a million of those. Dig how easily they could go to each other. I'm stuck here. You know what I mean? When it was just, they just needed this much help to finish it. How strong their go-to guy was.
Brought you in a lot, David Foster.
A lot. There was a period there, just as his career was taking off. He got me my very first gig with Gary Wright. I wasn't out of high school yet. He had just done Dreamweaver with Gary Wright. He had just done those sessions. And Gary was looking for a guy who could play synth that would work for $200 a week. And Foster thought of me. And we just started being friends. He started using Jeff on his own stuff, but especially when I'd gotten, that CS80 and stuff like that, he didn't do keyboards without me for a long time there.
Yeah.
That's how I got in the first Quincy thing, Michael Jackson Off the Wall. He had co-written 2 songs that were on the album. Quincy called him in to do synths. I was sitting there next to him. You know what I mean? Earth, Wind, and Fire, Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper, I conducted strings. He was doing his own string arrangements then. And it was like a bar of 7, and Foster didn't know how to even conduct that. And at Davlin, I conducted the strings on an Alice Cooper cut. These guys loved, and even like Page, Page did some great stuff without me, like on Mini Moke. He could get lucky and on a he got some great bass sounds on some of the first Toto demos and stuff. I was nowhere around on some of the Boss Gags on Silk Degrees. I didn't work on Silk Degrees.
Yeah.
I did the tour afterwards.
Yep.
But so these guys could get lucky with synths, but there were those times, believe me, again, when it was all, when the producer's there and the artist is there and the engineer's there and it's $350 an hour and the clock is ticking. You didn't want to, and for some reason the Mini Moog is acting up today. They loved having me around. They could focus on the part. You know what I mean? And I had no ego. I was not trying to show them up as a keyboard player. I was like, you play, I'll dial in the sound. What's the part you want to play? And I just loved making myself real handy. And Foster for, I can't tell you how many things. All the Quincy Jones stuff was first with Foster. Then these guys would start hiring me on their own. Quincy would hire me on his own, but first it was Brothers Johnson, Donna Summer, all this, the list of stuff that I got to be on. Hall & Oates. I was on 2 Hall & Oates albums that he produced.
Oh, Jason Sheff on this. Jason's one of my favorite guys to talk to. On Saints and Angels, written by you, Paige and Stan Lynch.
I had just, story of my life, I had just gone through this bin of numbered cassettes that were logged, but I had this bin of cassettes, some 60 minutes, some 90 minutes of piano motifs and synth motifs and just all this stuff. And I had hired my son-in-law to digitize it all and organize it all. And then they needed to be tuned because some of them were so old, the tape had stretched. And if I tried to figure out what I played, it was out of tune. I just went through this multi-year project of organizing all this old stuff. And all of a sudden, one day, I'm here in this very room and I see a cassette laying around. I pick it up and look at it and it says David and Steve. That's all. It wasn't one of the numbered cassettes. I'd never seen it before. It just was laying around. It says David and Steve. I put it on and listened to it. And it was definitely Paige playing piano, playing 4 chords over and over again. And it was definitely me scatting a melody. Over and over again. I send Paige an MP3. I go, do you recognize this? He goes, I've never heard this in my life. And I knew it was, I could tell it was him playing piano. This is at the Manor, and I just was like, you know what? I'm going to turn this into a song. And I finished it. And Paige came up with the B section. And we brought in Stan Lynch. I knew I wanted to write like a love letter to California. The Valley, where I've lived all these years, gets such a bad rap. It's so the wrong side of the tracks. You know what I mean? To all the supercilious people out there and the snoots and whatever. And really it's, the Valley has some funky parts and stuff. And a lot of people on the West Side definitely look down their nose at the Valley. But I'll never forget us landing here in 66, my mom and dad, and as we rented a house in Burbank, not, in a kind of funky part of the Valley at the time, near Verdugo, and my mom just going, it was August, and her just going, it was the promised land, smell that. What is that smell in the air? It's so sweet. It was all this night blooming jasmine that you get in the Valley here and stuff like that. It just, to my parents, coming from Hartford, Connecticut, it was the promised land. You know what I mean? And I just wanted to write like a love letter to California.
Whose idea was it to bring Miles Davis on Fahrenheit?
Miles had done Human Nature, and it had done real well. And Tommy LaPuma was then producing Miles and wanted to get us together, him and myself, hoping I had something else. And I did. I had a couple things that were kind of similar, and we tried cutting them. It didn't turn out. They just didn't click. But while we were in the studio, we were doing it at Jeff's house, which is exactly a block away from where I'm sitting right now. First we met him. He came and met us at David's house, and the whole band was there to meet Miles, and he couldn't have been cooler. But he wanted to sit down with me. He said, "Is there somewhere we can go and just be by ourselves?" And I played him these couple ideas I had, and he was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And it was more like, "Yeah, let's do it."
Yeah.
Um, but then while we were there, him and Jeff hit it off real good. Him and Jeff hit it off good, and they kind of exchanged little pieces of art. And he just dug hanging with us. And Jeff had his great recording studio there, and we asked him if he'd play on something, and he graciously did.
Jeff's house is not in the family anymore, right? Or is it?
Not the family. No, Chris, his son almost bought it at one point, but I think the studio is still there. Some guys were actually renting out the whole thing as like a thing where a band, there was only 2 bedrooms in that house where a band, and there were like bunk beds in there where a band could live there and work on that studio, rent out the whole thing for a month to do an album. You know what I mean? There was a while that it was open as a business like that.
What was that called? Like you're working for $200 a week with Gary Wright. I know that you outrun that a little bit by the time Boss Skaggs called you, but that was still a good run for you, wasn't it?
Amazing. And Gary couldn't have been cooler. I didn't really know him from Spooky Tooth. He was definitely, I remember he was 30 years old, 32 years old or something at the time, and I was 17. But he could not have been more generous, nicer, would always buy us dinner. And he was connected. He was with D. Anthony, this big time manager, and these great agents. We were the opening act for all the Frampton Comes Alive. For that live album, we were the opening act on every one of those shows. We traveled all the time together with Frampton's band. We were the opening act, same manager, same agent, and it was a no-brainer. All those things in Cobo Hall. That's where Dreamweaver first took off, was in Detroit, and we just, what they didn't know, people, $200. You know what I mean? He only paid you $200. I would have paid him $200.
Yeah.
I was living the dream because right away we're doing. It's not like we played some clubs and some small things when Gary would headline, but right away we were doing like Days on the Green. I'm doing stadium concerts at 17 years old. Yeah, we were the opening act playing at 9 a.m., but still, they would let them in there the night before, so the place would be packed. And I would talk about living my dream of I just wanted to play in front of people.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get the hell out of school, and I was about to start trying to put together a club band playing top 40 stuff. I just wanted to do what my brothers were doing. I wanted to do what they were doing. Jeff was, toured with Steely, was toured with Sonny and Cher, and then Steve was in Steely Dan and toured with them. And Mike was with Seals and Crofts and Michael Franks. And I just wanted to
Well, Jeff was with Seals and Crofts as well, wasn't he?
yeah,
Yeah.
at different times,
Yeah.
I just wanted to be doing that. I wanted to get the hell out of Dodge, but I didn't have I auditioned for Mac Davis and I auditioned for Tim Buckley and did not even come close. Believe me, Tim Buckley was looking for someone with some jazz chops and stuff like that. And I was like, so the Gary gig where I mostly was playing Moog bass
Yeah.
and, maybe a clavinet part here and there and a synth pad was just like, I had a ball. You know what I mean? I was living the dream.
When you were in the Silk Degrees tour, when he gave you a call, and I remember you had said making at least double.
Mhm.
You had played with your brother, with Jeff, obviously, in specific bands, had you though?
Not that much. Not that much. That's another reason why that Gary Wright gig was so important, is because Jeff and Paige, they knew they'd come to some high school things I had done. They knew my high school band was, they used to show up at my high school band gigs. They were so fun. And my band was amazing. Lukather, Landau, Carlos Vega, John Pierce. They were in my high school band. And it was my band. I picked which songs we did. But dig the guys in my band. All of us except Carlos went to Grant High School. I mean, they were all in my high school. Lukather and Landau, John Pierce. Carlos, Andy Leeds met him at the Hollywood Bowl. They were both ushers. Carlos went to Eagle Rock High, but he was like, let's check this guy out on drums. And it was like, okay, that was my high school band. So, the guys, Jeff and Paige, would come to my rehearsals and they'd show up at our gigs. We'd be playing proms, and here comes Jeff and Paige walking in. They wanted to play cowbell. They just wanted to, it was the gig, they wanted to be at the gig. You know what I mean? I'm doing top 40 stuff. But then with Gary, they saw how I could handle these synths live.
Yeah.
This stuff was so new.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And Boz, Paige, they just had done Silk Degrees where there were strings. They needed someone to cover those string parts. There was this thing called an ARP string ensemble. You know what I mean? Very simple stuff. I didn't have to play the piano parts. I didn't have to learn any of the two-fisted piano parts. It was either Paige or Jay Winding or someone else who was real solid. I just had to do the synth stuff, which was, again, they saw how I could really handle that stuff live with, seeing me with Gary. And that I was the obvious choice to be second keyboard player with Boz.
Carlos Vega was?
He was my high school drummer who I, right away. He was better than anybody. I was relentless that way in school. Even guys that were my friends or whatever, I always, you know what I mean? I almost had this Frank Zappa kind of thing where I'd find talent. And if somebody was
Miles Davis too. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Miles Davis too. When all of a sudden Lukather, you know what I mean? When I heard Lukather and Landau, it was just like undeniable. I didn't want to be in a band with two guitar players. Are you kidding me? Even though I was wanting to do a lot of Steely Dan stuff, it really lent itself to the stuff I was doing. I had no intention of being in a band with two guitar players, but Lukather came and auditioned, and he was amazing. And then I saw him. His best friend in school was this other kid, Mike Landau, this real shy kid who I knew could play too. And I had the balls to ask Lukather, hey, will you bring him over to audition? And Lukather I'll never forget, he gave me this look like, you want me to bring another guitar player over to audition for the gig I just auditioned for? Like, where did you get those balls? You know what I mean? And I was like, yeah, would you? Well, he brings Landau over. One of the songs Landau was supposed to learn, I was having the guitar players learn, was Free Ride by the Edgar Winter Group. And you know what? We count it off and do it. And Lukather hooks up his guitar and they do the lead solo in harmony. And I'm like, holy shit. I had to have both of them. You know what I mean? The talent was just too obvious, was too blazing.
Jude Cole to me is a god. Tell me, how far back do you guys go?
And I've told Jude all this time, I'll never forget. I was at my parents' house. We were having a dinner one night, and my brother Jeff comes in. He goes, come here, I want to play something. And Jeff Jeff was doing sessions constantly, but he rarely ever said, check out this session I was on. And he was like, dig this guy. The CD had just come out, I think it was the CD then.
It was.
And he goes, check out this guy. I think this guy is amazing. And it was the Third Street record. You know what I mean? And Jeff was on it and he played it for me. And I just was bowled over like everyone else, was positive the guy was going to be a huge star and looked great.
Yeah.
He played guitar and sang great and cool lyrics. He wound up having some mutual friends. He knew James Howard, who knew this guy, who knew Jude from something else. We actually did some movie score stuff together, helped each other. He produced some stuff for a while that he hired me on. He did we did like a 3-day tour. I've just always been a huge fan. Again, I had that chorus. That was a piece I had for decades.
Mm-hmm.
Two-time lover. Hey, man.
Steve, what's going on, man? How are you?
What's going on with you?
Oh,
I told him about your favorite picture in the world, you two backstage in Vancouver.
Oh, yeah. No,
hey, I was telling your dad, listen, I'm not blowing smoke. I've been hearing some bits and pieces of you online there, and I've been seeing some clips. You're playing your ass off, man. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. You know what I mean?
Oh, Steve, man, thank you. And that means
sounding great. You're getting this confidence and stuff. You're coming into your own, and it's really nice to see, man. I'm proud of you, you know?
Oh, Steve, man, thank you. And also too, congrats on the new album, man. Like I've been listening to the singles as they've been coming out, and I'm probably gonna listen to the whole album probably tonight. But man,
Yeah,
that
check it out.
that is some real stuff going on too. Like,
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very excited. I'm very
yeah.
excited. And I've been getting great response. You know what I mean? I've been like so indulgent. It's been so nice not having to look over my shoulder and have
You're
to,
just playing.
I'm just doing my thing. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
His high school band had Carlos Vega.
Oh, for real?
Carlos Vega,
Oh, yeah.
they were old friends. Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah. My best friend, Andy Leeds, you know, who I would hang out at the park he was a sax player. And at one point, my band had horns in it. Well, but his summer job for 2 summers, he was an usher at the Hollywood Bowl, like my son Dominic, too. Carlos was also an usher at the Hollywood Bowl. And Andy just said to me, he goes, you know, I've met this kid from Eagle Rock. And Eagle Rock might as well been Arizona as far as we were concerned. We were such this valley. Everyone else in my band was at my high school. But Carlos was from Eagle Rock. And I knew it was another their school had a great music teacher who was really, really good. And there were some really good jazz players and stuff out of Eagle Rock High. Anyway, Carlos came and auditioned, and it was like he was immediately the new drummer, you know?
So Jeff was busy doing. Would you have picked Jeff because he was doing? Jeff was already out there.
Jeff was on the road with Steely Dan and stuff. This is when I was still in high school.
Yeah.
Jeff was working. Jeff was doing sessions. He was doing Steely Dan, Sonny and Cher first. He was living his dream.
Wow.
He just would come, you know, he'd come over to the parents' house and stick his head in at rehearsals and stuff. And
Carlos and Jeff, were they friends? They were friends, right?
yes, absolutely. They had finished Boys of Summer, and Henley wanted the song was done, recorded, finished. They were just doing the lead vocal. And I kid you not, Henley decided he wanted it up 1/2 step. Like say if they recorded the song in the key of C,
All right.
he wanted it to be C sharp.
Right.
Not even a whole step, not even from C to D. He wanted it up 1/2 step. And they wanted to know if I had some magic box that could transpose the whole track. Now, we do have those magic boxes now. You know what I mean? We can. Ableton Live, as a matter of fact, we talked about that earlier. That has this great transpose thing where the voice doesn't get munchkin-y or whatever. I use it just for that. But there really was no way to do it then. So while they're talking about it, it was a drum machine-based song. Boys of Summer was all done with drum machine. And so while the way I remember it, now again, some other people may beg to differ, but while everyone was out of the room, we were just left set up in there. And I had I had my Oberheim OB8 in there. And I was with Mike Campbell, the co-writer of the song. We just re-recorded it. We got the drum machine going, and I just played the song a 1/2 step higher. The ba da boom ba da do do do.
So that's you.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Now I wasn't the original guy on it. I was the guy they brought in when they wanted it up a 1/2 step, thinking I just had some magic box. You know, I had some magic box that could make it go up a 1/2 step. I just waited till everyone was out of the room, and we just replayed the whole song up a 1/2 step. You know, with the guitar player, with the co-writer of the song, you know, and the drum machine going, and recorded it with the second engineer. You know, I don't even think LaDonnie was in the room at the time. We just were left set up, and we just did it. Now, then they brought in Pino Palladino to do fretless bass, and, you know, and it was in the key Don wanted it to be in.
Before Toto IV, was there a part of you, because the last two albums hadn't done as well as the company or you guys didn't expect, and I like those albums a lot, especially like Hydra a lot, but was there a part of you going into that, because you don't, who knows what's going to happen? I mean, that was you guys at your best, it seemed, but was there a part of you that thought, well, if this doesn't work out, I'm just going to do my synth things? Or was anybody in the band thinking, well, this might not work out? Or are you guys that confident?
No, I was in this. I was excited because I had learned, but during the third album, which was a difficult period for me, as far as we had brought an new engineer in who was a co-producer, this guy Jeff Workman, and him and I bumped heads. We did not get along. We didn't get along, and that was a very rough project for me. But out of that, and I was trying to put my ideas. I had our studio all set up, and we had this 8-track Otari. And I said, my idea at the time was, okay, I'm going to put the rhythm tracks on 2 tracks, and I'm going to experiment, do all my experimenting without the guys around, and throw all this stuff down on the remaining 6 tracks. And then when it's time to do synths, I'll know just what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no one ever wound up hearing any of that. I killed myself on those 6 tracks, and no one on all the tracks of the album. I did all this crazy experiments and really cool shit with the modular synthesizer and sequencers, and I bounced it down and I put these slap things on it and had these crazy experiments that came out great. No one has ever heard that stuff. And you know why? Because I couldn't get it up again. When it was time to do synths, I couldn't recreate that stuff. It was magical, and it was bounced down. And I didn't even think to try flying it. It was in the wrong format. It was on this Otari 8-track. We couldn't sync up the machines in those days. So the Toto IV, the next album, and this is all I was thinking about. I wasn't thinking about, to your question.
Course.
I wasn't thinking about what else am I going to do. I just was thinking about, I got to show people what I'm capable of, what this stuff can do when it's used when it's used in a real musical way. And the next year, our setup in the studio was exactly the same, except David Page bought 2 24 tracks. And the guy said, okay, we'll make you some work tapes, but we're not going to use your stuff. You're not an engineer. You don't know what you're doing. I said, sure, okay. Just let me make me these work tapes so I can fool around. Jeff Workman, this guy that I had bumped heads with so much, he started hanging out with us. He was hanging out with David at the Manor all the time. And I started asking him, I said, Jeff, if I was to throw something on tape, why couldn't they use it? And he began to give me lessons in basic engineering, in 0 VU. Well, because we had this great Trident Fleximix board that had meters on everything on the, how do I know I'm getting the ultimate level into a harmonizer, into a piece of outboard gear? I'm always just kind of guessing. I just kind of turn up the send and I kind of turn up the input, and it kind of works sometimes. How do I know I'm giving it the ultimate level? Because the 2 reasons why they wouldn't be able to use it was if I had something that was distorted or if the level was too low.
Mm.
They had to push all that noise. And he just taught me the concept of 0 VU, of getting good, solid levels.
Yeah.
And taught, you know what I mean? And so this guy that I didn't get along with at all wound up being totally responsible for teaching me where I wound up doing 95% of the synthesizer stuff on Toto IV.
Yeah.
I engineered, and they kept every fucking bit of it.
Oh my God.
Nobody was around when I was doing the Rosanna solo, And to me, the other key thing about that 4th album was that Greg Ladani, who had become a friend, he had nothing to do with the rest of the album. He just came in and mixed. He didn't know who recorded what. There was none of the band politics. He just had fresh ears. If he liked something, the Rosanna solo was 2 faders, left and right. All that different stuff flying around all over the place. He didn't say, well, who engineered this? Levels were just nice and bold and just right, and he cranked it up.
All of a sudden, you guys were like all those Grammys. Your dad's in the orchestra pit. That must have been kind of cool because he's probably looking, what the hell? You know who you
My
guys were.
girlfriend now, she just loves that story. That, you know what I mean? And even Mike was in, had taken Hungate's place, so he was with us. But there's my dad in the pit, like he always was. Oscars, Grammys, whatever. Top session guys, movie guys got that call usually. And he was in the pit again, like usual. And here we are getting Grammy after Grammy, and his friends are all going, "Yo, Joe, way to go!" And you know what I mean. All three of us boys are kept going up to the stage. It was great. We were having a ball. We were the fourth one, and that tour there, everything was clicking. And when you're playing, you know what I mean, when it's selling good and people are responding, and the record company they love you, and everyone's hanging out, and everyone dinner is on them, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that's the good stuff.
What was that tour like? What are your memories of that tour?
Like I said, it was all good and positive, and Rosanna was traveling with me and was on the road with me, did the whole tour with me. And
What was her reaction to that song?
at the time she loved it. I actually, long after we, like 10 years after we broke up, I would feel sorry for her, because every time she's on Letterman, you know what I mean? These guys trying to figure out what the fuck do they ask them about besides their new movie. You know what I mean? She'd be asked about that song. And a couple times I think she made some disparaging comments that, of course, Lukather latched onto about how, if I hear that song again, I'm going to scream. I'm sick of that damn song. At the time she was, you know what I mean? She thought it was great, like we all did. She was, believe me, I was there when she walked in the door as David Page was playing the groove, as he was writing the song. I'm like, Dave, meet my girlfriend, meet this girl I'm seeing, Rosanna. And he was as taken with her, understandably, as we all were. It wasn't a weird, jealous thing at all. She was on fire then, and looked gorgeous, and was funny and sweet, and still is,
Was that challenging, dating an actress?
Fuck yeah.
I don't think I could do it.
Believe me, she kind of put everything on hold to hang out and be around. And that wasn't the first time she did that. She did that with a lot of people. But just to answer your question, the short answer is yes, it's very challenging. And I've never been with an actress since. Tell Chase, remember that, Jeff's heroes, Jim Gordon, Jim Keltner. Look up Leon, Delaney and Bonnie, Accept No Substitute. Listen to the drumming on those albums. Those were the stuff that Jeff Keltner and Gordon.
Yeah.
Those were the guys that Jeff modeled. Jim Gordon was the shuffle guy, the rock and roll shuffle guy. Jim Keltner, what he brought. Listen to Dreamweaver by Gary Wright. That was straight. That was Keltner that said, "Hey, can we try it kind of like as a shuffle?"
Yeah.
That was Keltner.
If you enjoyed the video, remember, subscribe to our channel, click the bell notification so you don't miss any of our videos. Comment on our videos. We read all the comments. Like them and share them on social media. If you want to make a donation, there's a PayPal link at the very top of all of our videos. We'd appreciate that. I'm John Bowden. This is Rock History Music.